welcome to our Challengers live stream. We're going to get super spoilery. We are so happy to see so many folks are already here waiting and already have some thoughts for us. Always love that very much. You have to let us know once things kick in here. How does it look? How does it sound? There we go. Hold on. There's that. And let's click out of this. Thanks for being patient. And here we are. Hi, good to see you. I see Danny has a thought already. And Ulfus, Danny says, I saw it last night. It was amazing. I think I had the same issue with one of the camera choices as Christy, and the ending wasn't great. Yes, let us get into all of that eventually. Ulfus says, I saw it on Sunday. I think I'm still on the edge of my seat. Did not expect to like it that much. Hello to Mick in Louisville, Kentucky. Good to see you. Yeah, let's get into it. Oh, my Ice Cold Fire 612. I saw it 3 times.
Wow.
I think I would like to have seen it again. I did not get a chance to see it again after we saw it the first time.
Yeah, I wanted to see it in IMAX this weekend, but because of the Dune 2 IMAX push, it was on these weird like half schedules on a lot of the IMAX theaters that were near me. So I was like, yeah. I even thought about driving way out to like, Ontario or one of the ones that have like the biggest IMAXs in Southern California, but they were just doing Dune 2 and not doing Challengers in IMAX at all.
Oh. All Zendaya all the time.
Yeah, pretty much.
She's having an incredible 2024, and we're only a few months in. So we're only in the first third of the year, and she already has 2 of the best films of the year already, and they're very, very different roles. So yes. So Kay Walton says, I love this film and love the ending, but I do love that it's divisive and people are picking sides, LOL. Picking sides what? In terms of who she ends up with, who she should end up with? Who what?
Who's like I've heard people talk about the whole like I wasn't sure who I was supposed to be rooting for, and I'm like all of them and none of them. That's part of what makes this so cool.
That is part of what makes it interesting. Yes, for sure. I totally agree because let me move my thing, my candles there. Yeah, I think that's part of the fun is that at different points it all makes sense as far as all those twosomes and threesomes and all of that. Micah says, Alonso, are you cosplaying with a Lacoste shirt? You did also wear that in our out of the theater reaction.
I just have a few. I don't ever play tennis. I just have some of these shirts. It's a sheer coincidence, I promise.
Yes. Ethan says the Ontario IMAX is amazing. I highly recommend.
One of these days, we'll schlep out there for something.
Yes, and Kay Walton says I saw it in Dolby and IMAX. I bet the score sounded great.
Ooh,
I've heard some mixed reactions to the use of the music, like as techno as a fit for this story, but also does it overpower the dialogue? Like in that sauna scene, for example. Is it too loud? It's kind of like a character in between them almost. So
yeah, I mean, there's that school of thought that like scores and editing should all like the best ones are the ones you don't notice, that they do their job so effectively and they manipulate the mood so effectively that you aren't even aware that it's happening. But I think there's something to be said for a score that like very much establishes itself front and center and demands to be, included as part of what you're taking in from the screen. And I love how even just in conversation scenes, you just get this, it's very cool, I thought.
It adds a sexy kind of exciting vibe to it. Our good friend Brett Luthole says, Lonzo, you look and sound great. Caramel 2 says, Zendaya can't sell tickets. She's not a draw. Disagree. I think she's doing okay. Or maybe she just picks projects that are enormously popular and or challenging and, draw people who want to be in the conversation or whatever. So I disagree. I think she's great.
If anything, too early to tell. It's not like she's been really handed a lot of vehicles so far. Like Dune, she's part of an ensemble and it's, the IP is the draw for a lot of people, or Villeneuve is. So, well, it remains to be seen. But I think she's an exciting actress. And this movie, I think, gives her much more to chew on than most other roles that we've seen her in. I mean, like, obviously, yes, Euphoria clearly gives her a lot to work with, but this is the more sort of like mature character that she's gotten to play. And I think demonstrating a real range here, like she was great in Malcolm and Marie, which is a terrible movie. But I think she's really good in this.
I agree. And I saw some interview with her where she was saying like, I've been playing 16 since I was 16, and now she's in her mid 20s. I think she's like 27 maybe. And this is finally like the most mature role to date. You know, she gets to be a wife, she gets to be a mom, but there's also just beyond those labels, there is a maturity and a swagger and a command here that is very much in the script. But guys, if you're watching, you can see my husband's picking up Baxter to go take him out for a little walk. Oh,
yeah,
bye, buddy.
All the main characters in this movie age 13 years. So we get to see them from like seniors in high school to, you know, well into their 30s.
18 to 31, right?
Yeah.
And I think they do a really good job in an understated way of making that evolution seem believable at every stage. And
hair, costuming, you know, just the slouches even.
Very little that they do to indicate, you know, that time has passed, but it's all very believable. SoCal Dan says, I quietly wandered out of the theater early out of boredom. Oh, Dan, you missed some things.
Don't know what to tell you, man.
Yeah, that's a bummer. So let's talk about some of the big twisty things that we didn't want to get into in our non-spoiler review, which hopefully you guys got a chance to watch. If not, there's a link to it down below. So one of the earliest aha moments for me was when it's a flashback to them, you know, when they're kids at, I guess, the US Open, and the two guys have just won the junior doubles championship, and they're both flirting with Tashi, and they're all kissing each other in the hotel room, this incredibly sexy scene. But then the image that we see in the trailer and we see in stills is of her kind of like looking up at the camera with sort of this devious smile on her face. And the suggestion is that they have both made their way down her body, right? Like they're kissing her neck and they've made their way down her body. And I assumed that they were both going down on her or some variation of that. But what's really happening is they're making out with each other. She's gotten them to make out with each other. And it's this early indication of how much control she has over them and also how much insight, because she doesn't really know them, but she knows enough to know that they really, really want each other.
Yeah, she can definitely sense all the subcurrents that's been going between these two guys who've been at this like preppy tennis academy together and been roommates. And it's like there's clearly a level of intimacy that they're only willing to acknowledge a certain amount of. But you know, once one of them says, yeah, I taught him how to masturbate, it's like she's like, I see what we're doing here. And you're right, it's the first indication that she's going to be the boss of them for the next, you know, decade and a half.
Yes, Sam read, I said Spider-Verse. You know what I meant. Thank you. I think we all know what I meant when I said that. Only so many words in my brain, and Andrea laughed out loud. Thank you, Andrea, for supporting me in this. I know what I meant. You all know what I meant. It's going to be okay. You guys, I'm injured. I had a skiing injury over the weekend. I'm all messed up on stuff.
Cut her some slack.
Ross says, do you think the two guys ever slept together? Yes.
If they didn't, it's only because Art, I think, was maybe too chicken to commit. But I think they did about everything else possible, maybe. But it wouldn't surprise me, because, I mean, that sauna scene then either becomes a reminder of a thing that's already happened or a reminder of the thing that's always been in the air between the two of them that they've never quite fully addressed.
Right. Or is it just that, like, the fact that they jerked off together is the intimacy of that, you know, is that the extent of it? I don't know.
Well, and that they made out, you know, for that moment with Tashi.
But before then, before then.
Before then. Don't know. I mean, it's clear that Patrick is bisexual. Like, the movie gives us that moment where he's going through Tinder and swiping women, and then a dude pops up and his finger sort of hangs in the air for a bit and then swipes. So it's not like oops, that's a mistake. How did that guy get in there? It's very much like, nah. You know, so that 3 seconds kind of tells you, all right, so you have an expanded palette here. And you know, whether or not Art has the same feelings or the same sort of willingness to pursue those interests that Patrick has, it may well be that Art has as much feeling for Patrick as Patrick does for Art, but has always been more, you know, repressed or afraid or whatever. And again, that's all an element that gives Tashi a level of control over him, because she is behind the wheel of that marriage and that relationship. You get that impression. She's not just his coach on the court. Like, she's pretty much constantly guiding his choices and whatever it is he does, which I think is part of why Patrick is able to kind of come in and sort of, worm his way back in, because he can give her the sense for a moment maybe that she doesn't have to be in control of things, that he'll sort of, drive the bus for a bit.
Yeah, I mean, Patrick from the jump is the more assertive one, right? And Art sort of like the good guy, a little more passive, a little more of a pleaser. And Patrick is always like swaggering, charismatic, a little cocky. And you can see how she is drawn to both of them. I believe she's emotionally drawn to both of them, but I also believe that her quest to win dictates who she's with at various points in time, because she can't play anymore herself, but she's still so competitive. She needs to be attached to a winner. And that is why I think she goes back and forth sexually with them over the years.
True. And for as passive as Art often is, he clearly, like, he sees that opening, when she comes to visit, and then when she gets injured, when Patrick comes to visit and then she gets injured, where he can sense the cracks in that relationship, and he can fan the flames to sort of make them even worse, and then like be the one to be by her side when when shit goes down, and then she tells Patrick to go away. So he's got a little Eve Harrington going on.
Adam Jimenez, our channel member, hello, good to see you, says, "Woo, made it. It's interesting that Zendaya produces this film and doesn't Bradley Cooper it, and just makes her character look good at all times. All three leads are horrible people here, and I love it." I don't think they're all horrible people. I think they're all complicated, and they all want to win, and they're all selfish at times, but then they're also all needy at times.
Yeah, I think they're all fascinatingly flawed. Somebody referred to her character as a villain after the screening. I'm like, I don't think so. I think that they all have this weird sort of interconnected, interdependent relationship going on, and they make wise choices and they make terrible choices, and they have ambition and drive that manifests in positive ways and in negative ways. But yeah, I don't think any of them are just flat out awful. They're human beings.
Well, along those lines, Leon Kuwata comments, genuinely astonished that anybody can view Zendaya as anything but a monumental villain. She's not. She's not.
Sorry.
She knows what she wants.
Yeah, agree to disagree.
She knows what she wants, and then she connives to get it. And I don't think she's evil. I don't think she means to hurt anybody. People might get hurt along the way, but she does not mean to hurt them. It's all about her selfish desires.
Yes, and I think that there is some level of consent along the way from both of those guys, as far as like, however, what her plans are, what she wants to have happen, how she wants that to play out. They're not just like, being taken in by her. Like, I think they all understand what they're getting out of each other and what they inspire in each other, whether it's in literal playing or in coaching or in their relationships or whatever. So yeah, I don't think she's a villain, because I think that the people that are in her sphere, the other two guys, are complicit in everything that happens, whether they realize it or not, whether they are actively wanting her to control the situation or sort of allowing it to happen because that's part of the draw of what they see in her.
Right. They want to win too. And this is why, among the many lines that get repeated throughout the course of the film by different people at different times, each of them says to her, "I want you to be my coach."
Right.
Right. And part of that's because they want to be with her. They want to be near her, but they want to win. They know that she can get them there.
Yeah. And she has, I think, a sort of, I don't want to say ruthless, but like a focused, thing that the great coaches have about winning, about performance, about, being the best, that the two of them lack in certain ways. I mean, Patrick is knocking around the circuit, and he's like 174th or whatever they say that he is, is clearly like kind of in the middle of the bunch, and just sort of like a kind of rich guy who's doing this because it beats having a real job. And, I think that Art is so pliable and is, early on at least, not as good a player as Patrick is. Like, he has to sort of ask Patrick, please let me win the finals. I need this, And so I think her drive, especially when she can no longer play herself and can apply that drive to them, like, they both need it, because on their own, they don't got it.
Yeah. As Ed Looney puts it here in the comments, is Zendaya here to make friends? And Brent agrees, no, Zendaya did not come here to make friends.
Boom.
And that's okay. Our friend Bob Sullivan says, I was surprised that the daughter Lily's paternity was never questioned. She seems about the right age. This is mind blowing, Bob. This never even occurred to me. Alonso mentioned that you asked him this elsewhere as well. I never even questioned that she would be anything but Art's kid, but I guess time wise, she could be Patrick's kid too.
Yeah, there's definitely been a bit of a revolving door there, and certainly I think even when she's involved with one, she's not necessarily shutting out the other. So yeah, we don't know. That's
Right. And then
one
the
of the
night,
mysteries.
yeah, the night that she sneaks out of their hotel room to go meet
Mm,
up with Patrick in the windstorm, and then she comes back. I mean, clearly they slept together in the car, and then she
yeah,
comes back and she sees that Art has awoken and is, sleeping with the little girl and keeping her company. There's like the slightest flush of guilt or something. There's some sort of genuine feeling of remorse there because he's a good guy.
yeah, and it could be just a thing of like he's such a great dad, or maybe the daughter woke up with a nightmare and she wasn't there, and the
Yeah.
dad was. Like, who knows? But yeah, there's a lot. Again, I think this is a really rich character, and Zendaya is giving us so many of the notes in it, and they don't necessarily all come down like big speeches. Like she just the way that the things that her face reflects, the way that she will pause for a second, like just little things along the way tell you so much about who this woman is and where she comes from and what she wants. And I think, well, when we get to the big finale, we'll get to the
Yes.
finale.
Yes. Seth points out the lighting in the parking lot is very Wong Kar-wai. Yeah, everything about
Oh
that. And also
yeah.
like the staccato kind of slow motion.
Yeah, and even just like the wild nature around them, that windstorm, like reflecting their own sort of personal, whirligig of emotions. Yeah, it does have that sort of it's big filmmaking, and I think Guadagnino is not afraid of that kind of thing, which is one of the things that I think makes him one of the more exciting directors working right now.
For sure. Well, let's talk about the big, exciting, mind blowing thing that happens at the end, because in our theater, that was a moment. And
Oh
you and I
yeah.
were referring to it as Chekhov's tennis serve. One of our viewers called it Chekhov's tennis racket. One way or the other, that's exactly what that is. And you see it kind of coming as this like slow motion car crash of events.
Yeah.
And everyone in our theater was just gasping, like, oh, they do it so slowly, putting the ball right at the neck of the racket, and it's going to happen. And oh, that was a great
and
moment.
again, it's one of those things that like gives the audience credit for paying attention. They don't like put a giant neon sign on it, but you get that scene earlier on after the night that they, one of the times that they've met up with Tashi. Art and Patrick are playing the next day, and Art wants to know if they slept together, but he kind of doesn't want to know and doesn't want to ask directly. And so he basically says, like, if you did, so Patrick points out to Art that he has a tell when he serves, that he always bops the ball on like the sort of under the round part of the racket. I don't know any of the terms here. And he always taps that before doing the serve. And he says, if you slept with her, I'll do the thing. And he does. And this is like in the first half of the film and not touched upon again. And then at the end, when they're looking at each other and he's about to go into the serve, yeah, everything was like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. And he does it. And then so that knowledge has been shared. And that brings out the fighting spirit of Art. Like that's in a way, at that moment, Patrick is being Tashi in terms of like, I have to draw this out of you through threats or through something. She goes, Art has basically asked Tashi to tell him that she'll leave him if he doesn't win this match. Not that he wants her to, but that he needs that weighing down on him as a threat to really like rev him up and get him to be the player he needs to be. And so now Patrick is doing that for him. He is doing his friend a mitzvah by telling him that he slept with his wife, which is a wonderful storytelling. That's so brilliantly complicated. And then we end with Tashi letting out that guttural roar that we haven't seen her do since the US Open finals when she was a teenager, which is like sort of her kind of victory acknowledgement. I don't even know how to describe it, but I love that whole sequence.
Yeah. Come on. fun. But what's funny too is that you see her watching them, and it's a rare moment where she's not in control.
Yeah,
because
that's
she
true.
doesn't know about this thing with the tennis racket. She wasn't there for that moment, right?
Right.
So when he does the thing, when he changes his serve and Art's whole face changes, she's like, what is going on here? And what's so interesting is that very infrequently during this crucial tennis match does she actually watch the tennis. There are several
True.
shots where Luca's showing the crowd and everyone's heads are going back and forth like they do in a tennis match, and she's looking straight ahead. This is a moment where she's looking back and forth because she's like, wait, what just happened here? She's not in control, and that's scary and weird for her, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that entire match, of course, is, you know, like the bookend of this whole movie. Like we start there and we keep coming back to that match throughout. All the flashbacks are leading us up to that amazing last moment. This is reminding me of, so in the 50s, Charlie Chaplin, when he was living in exile because of, you know, his political leanings and whatnot, made a film called A King in New York that he shot in England. And there's a scene where he's playing an exiled king, and they go to the movies, and Chaplin and a lot of the other filmmakers that era hated CinemaScope. They thought it was like a dumb gimmick or whatever. And so there's a part where they're like watching trailers, and it's a Western, and these two guys are at opposite ends of a saloon shooting at each other. And the entire crowd is watching it like this, like they're at a tennis match.
That's funny. Hey, so I want to say hi and thanks real fast to Carlton Rudder. Thank you so much for your kind contribution. Good evening from the UK, sending my support. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. It's probably what? It's like 8:22 where you are, maybe? Anyway, happy to see you. Want to get to some of the comments from our folks here. A chick and a duck says, I love this movie. Raya says, do we think Tashi actually loved Art? I don't know. Did she ever actually love either of them?
It could go either way, you know. She loves both of them. Maybe she loves some things about them and others not, but she, you know, tolerates what she doesn't like in return for the things that she gets out of it. Hard to say. It's a complex question.
Yes. JP Joseph says the reveal of Patrick being rich but pretending to be poor was so good to me. Explains so much about him. Yeah, really, it really did, because you don't see that coming at all. Art seems like the pampered rich kid, and Patrick does seem like just this dirtbag living out of his car. But we realize that's his rebellious choice. He's rejecting his wealthy upbringing.
You know, I would what's the term in the Bible? I would trade my my fiefdom for half a bagel, you know.
Yeah, but it's the fact that he has no cash.
That's it.
He has no cash, and he's like, I need to get an advance on my, you know, paltry little entry winnings, and, you know, just to get this crappy hotel in New Rochelle, New York, and just all the stuff is that is really great character development there.
Did you notice, sorry, real quick, the lady who's doing the applications, where she's like, oh, you know, you won't remember me, but I was a line judge at the US Open, you know, at the juniors final. And then when they flash back to that game, you see her for a quick second as a line judge, as a ball girl, whatever it was she was doing.
Yeah. That was a good touch. Brett says, I'm pretty sure I have been to the Applebee's in Mason, Ohio. Yes. I love that this sport that is so fancy, that so much mundane shit happens in like the Applebee's and the parking lot of Applebee's. I think that's it's so funny and so unexpected. And the New Rochelle part of it too, that it's just some
tire
local
store.
Yeah, some local tournament, and it's not the US Open, and it's not Stanford.
It's on Wimbledon.
It just shows how enduring this relationship is, you know, for better or for worse, between all of them. I want to talk about how much phallic eating occurs in this movie between the churro scene and the bananas when they're taking a break between sets. Luca Guadagnino did a whole like breakdown, like behind the scenes of how I got that scene for the New York Times, and he talks about how he holds that shot for a long time of the two of them eating churros at the cafeteria at Stanford, because he wants that tension to build, but then it cuts to like Patrick invading art space, right? And there's menace in that, but there's also flirtation in that. And then Art like reaches up and gently brushes the sugar off of his face. There's intimacy in that. So there's so many conflicting and fascinating forces at work here all at once.
Well, one of the things I've always loved about Guadagnino, the first movie of his I ever saw was I Am Love. And I was immediately blown away by the idea of, and I've said this before, probably on this show at some point, you know, cinema is sight and sound. And I think that Guadagnino at his best is also touch, taste, and smell. You know, and he is such a sensual filmmaker, and he conveys those other senses so well. And so that churro scene, it's like, it's ridiculous in that it's so obviously phallic, and he knows it, and he knows we know it, and he knows the characters know it. But then to then up the ante with all the stuff with the sugar on the face and everything else, it's like he really puts you into that sensation of it all, and you can feel the grit of the sugar, and you can smell the cinnamon on the churros and the sweat of their being close to each other, and he just magically makes that happen. He's so good at it.
Yeah, food is important to him for sure. I mean, so much of the Tilda Swinton character's transformation in I Am Love occurs when she eats.
She's that scampi. It's like,
and then later on, when she's like lying in the field, like the sun-dappled field, like you can smell the dry grass. I mean, you feel the heat of the sun on you, you know. So yeah. Speaking of that, Micah has a question for you. Alonso, I've heard you talk about Guadagnino as a sensualist. How does this film compare to his past work for you?
Yeah, I think scenes like the churro, the all the sweating, all the slow-mo sweat stuff, you know, the point of impact with the racket and the ball stuff that he's doing. And like I get that some people think the putting a GoPro on a tennis ball was a bit much, you know, but I think so much of it is he is bringing us into what is the sensation of these characters, and you can just feel the fuzz on the tennis ball as they're like tapping it and grabbing it. You know, you can feel the exertion and the sweat when they're changing shirts during the tournament and stuff. I think he really digs into those moments of sensuality, basically, of letting us not just observe or hear, but like he really brings the audience closer into it in a way that I think a lot of filmmakers either don't try or don't know how to do as successfully.
Yeah, the underneath shot where like Mike Feist is looking at the camera, like the sweat is dripping
on the lens.
Every pore onto the lens. Chris Crawford, thank you so much for always being so generous and so kind. If you are a fan of baseball in general and the Seattle Mariners in particular, Chris Crawford and his My OY channel are here for you. He says, I loved this movie. I double fault anyone who doesn't see it, and other tennis puns. Yes, all of them.
Agreed.
Yeah, the ground strokes were super loud, like intentionally so to put us on edge. And I think that goes along with the score, just to have the whole thing feel like amplified, you know, like an intense experience.
And even the way that Patrick serves is really like, and it's called out that like, what do you do that serve for, you know? But there is something so floridly cinematic about the way he just throws his whole body into it, as opposed to your usual, you know.
Yes. My friend Nicole DeGraff is here. She says the way Patrick pulls Art's chair closer to him. Yes. It's such a masculine kind of like man spreading territoriality thing that's primal, but it's also like a flirtatious kind of sexy thing.
Well, yeah, I think Guy Ritchie does this a lot. You know, he'll give us these like insanely, you know, butch, muscular, tough guy characters who also are like real flirty with their muscular, butch, tough guy pals. And rather than do the sort of old school gay panic, get away, there's this sense of like, not right now, or I'll pass. So like it's always deflected in a way that is not shutting it down necessarily, and it's certainly not like, you gross gay, you know. And there's something about Patrick's aggression with Art that he's sort of like daring him to meet Patrick where Patrick is, and at the level that where Patrick is willing to be when it comes to their relationship, physical or otherwise. And Art has to like that's a way to frighten Art, because he knows that Art isn't ready to give back in that same way, in the way that he would on the court, for instance.
Caden Sams has a really good point. It says when Tashi serves at the Juniors U.S. Open, she serves just like Art does. Part of me thinks he borrowed Tashi's serve. Lines up with how Art's success has only gone up the more he swallows up Tashi, or that she has molded him in her image.
I was going to say the latter. Yeah, for sure. No, that's a really good. I did not catch that, but I'll look for that when I finally get to see this again.
I did not either. And Lacusto points out you can smell the tennis tube right away, or as I call them, tennis flavored Pringles. Right when you first open the seal,
yes,
and that smell of the fuzz. Yes, I played tennis in high school. I was not good. I played tennis my sophomore year in high school, but I have tiny little T-Rex arms and short legs, so I was not good at tennis.
Whenever I buy tennis balls now, it's only because I have plantar fasciitis and I have to roll them under my foot.
Oh, that's true. Those are helpful. And also an iced water bottle. That's good
yes,
too.
Good to know.
Have you done that too?
I've heard of that. I don't know that I've ever done it.
Yes, Chris has had it. So we have like spiky balls and smooth balls and frozen water bottles, and so I hear ya. We have done all that stuff. Hot in Here is perfect for this movie. Yes, that's a good point too. Yeah, all the musical choices are very entertaining. And the grunts, yes, the grunts are very sexual, says Sam. Yes, for sure. I mean, a lot of people grunt that way when they play, like Arancha Sanchez Vicario was very famous for that, right? Monica Seles was very famous for that. But here there's...
McEnroe, I think, was a grunter, right?
Yes. Also, someone pointed out lots of tennis racket abuse here. Right?
I suspect there's a lot of that. Like, if that's the thing in your hand, like, it's just going to, I also like another little tiny detail that you that assumes you're paying attention is the girl that Tashi beats in the US Open finals, who she talks about being mediocre and blah, blah, blah. Later we see as the women's champion because, Tashi's off the board, and so she is unfettered, even though she is a lesser player.
But she's also a robot. This person seems like, right?
Yeah.
This other young player who has no other distractions of like hot guys flirting with her.
And also, and Tashi has to like watch that happen. She has to be like, God damn it, like my fucking knee, or else I'd be out there showing her what for.
Right. She knows she's better.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. We should talk about some of the really cool camera work here. You mentioned the ball, the GoPro on the ball. That is one of the things that I thought was like a little too much because there's so much inherent drama in that scene. Other stuff is cool, like the under the court camera. I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
There's like some of the body mounted stuff felt kind of interesting, but like once the ball is the camera and the camera is the ball, that to me, it is such a flourish that it kind of took me out. But you liked all that stuff, it sounded like.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily have voted for it in the production process, but it didn't take me out of the film. It just kind of felt like of a piece with other kind of the way they were playing around with how do we shoot a tennis match that doesn't just look like what you would see on ESPN. I thought, okay, that's a choice. And it was one that I was like, it's fine. I didn't even really dwell on it that much until we talked about it later. Just to me felt like one of many things like the undercourt shot or whatever else that were kind of part of, the bag of tricks here.
Yes. Andrea says the cinematography is amazing. Kay Walton says, love the under the court shot. I believe it's his usual cinematographer.
Yes,
right?
It is. Hang on, I'm going to get this pronunciation right. Yes,
because he also works with
Apichapong Visathakun. Yes, Sayombo Mukdipram, who shot Uncle Bunmi, who can recall his past lives, and Memoria, and a lot of other Visathakun films, has also shot multiple movies at this point now for Guadagnino as well. He did Call Me by Your Name. He did Suspiria. So yeah, he's the auteurs have him in on their speed dial.
Yeah, there's something kind of like dreamlike and languid, but also very like tactile and sensual about the gauziness of Call Me by Your Name, right?
Sure.
Like the sleepy, sexy summer of it all. That happens throughout here, but then there's also great verve to the camera work as well. Brent points out. Go ahead.
I was saying, I think also he brings a lot of the sex to the film, even when it's not literal sex that's going on, but the way that the camera will dwell on the sweating, will dwell on like Zendaya in a tennis skirt and just like, which see like an article of clothing that seems designed for Zendaya to wear. the way that it's shot in this movie. It's like, yes, that's why these outfits exist, so that we can see this moment, because look at her,
Yeah. And she is always so smart about her red carpet looks, like everything that she wore for the Dune press tour. But here she did variations on tennis couture every single time, and it was inspired every single time. So cute and flirty and sexy, but also elegant. And she, of course, is gorgeous and tall and lean, so she can wear whatever she wants. But she's really smart about the way she uses her figure.
Yeah, and as a producer, she's like, okay, if people just see the photo and I'm not standing in front of a step and repeat, how are they going to know that I'm here to promote my tennis movie? I know.
Yeah, that's true. It's clever.
What was Brett saying?
No, I missed it. Something about.
Sorry.
Brett was saying now I want the Trent Reznor Atticus Ross score under a Wii tennis match. That sounds fun. That would work. Have you guys listened to the score? The actual soundtrack is now out. There was that remix version that came out a couple of weeks ago, and now the actual soundtrack is out there. So
cool.
It is fun to drive to.
Ooh, I bet.
I've heard some folks say they've enjoyed running to it. So that sounds really good. Yes. And so much of what is increasingly interesting here is the blurring of their conversations. Like when they're talking about tennis, it's during a moment of sex. And when they're playing tennis, there's obviously a sexual component to it. And so that increasing blurring of those two things is really fascinating.
As she says, tennis is not a game, it's a relationship. And the movie sort of proves that over and over again. And again, as you talk about the repeated lines that happen throughout that are in different contexts or coming from different characters, it sort of reminded me of the idea of like switching sides of the net, at some point during the game where like you're doing it again, but from a completely different perspective.
Seth says, between this and Love Lies Bleeding, I'm all for bisexual eroticism back in mainstream cinema.
Booyah!
Yes. It's been a pretty good year for movies so far. We've seen some pretty great stuff already.
It's been an amazing year we went up the first third of the year and we've already had like Challengers and People's Joker and Hundreds of Beavers and Love Lies Bleeding. There's
Dune
a lot
2.
of Dune 2. There's a lot of really great stuff happening. We're about to get Robot Dreams, which I'm a big fan of. So, it's a good time to go to the movies.
Furiosa's coming in a few weeks, which I've not heard anything about screenings. Have you?
Nothing. It's premiering at Cannes, and the publication that I write for has a lot of people in Cannes, but they're like, could you review it out of LA? And I'm like, if they show it to me in time, but if not, they're just going to send somebody who's in France to see it, I guess.
Yeah, but what happens usually with that, as you know, is that when there's the big premiere at Cannes, they do it simultaneously in the U.S., right? So
sometimes,
but
Indiana Jones, they do that.
It was because with the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull,
sure,
that was a weird time of the day in Los Angeles because it was Cannes time.
But that's the exception, though. I think very often they don't make that effort. So, we'll see what happens. I've got my fingers crossed.
Yeah, Mike Webb points out the scene with Tashi and Patrick at Stanford having sex and then arguing was all done in one take, I believe. Shout out to Guadagnino and Mook Dupron for such incredible staging in that scene. There are a lot of long takes. Like the scene where they are watching her at the US Open. It's like I think the camera follows them and they sit down and then it follows her and then it comes back to them. There's a lot of that kind of thing that sort of sucks you in and keeps that vibe going.
And it offers that there's that sense of athleticism in the film, not just in the way that people move or in their actual exertions, but just the energy level. When people the way that okay, I've got a big match, and so my endocrine glands are flowing, and I've got the adrenaline, and everything's kind of hyped up and bright, and I think the movie communicates that sensation.
John Hobb says he likes Brutalizer best on the soundtrack. I like the song Challengers. I Know, that's a good one. The yeah is also very catchy. I'm counting because it's called Yeah times 10, so I'm counting. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's 10. They said it 10 times.
It's the new haiku.
It's very catchy. Brett says, if the score doesn't get me back in the gym, nothing will. Tom asked, do you think this is Luca Guadagnino's best film? I love Call Me By Your Name and I love I Am Love.
Yeah,
This
I
is
would say,
pretty good. It's up there though.
yeah, I would. Those two are my favorites as well. I would put this up there, and bigger splash to an extent, but it's maybe like one level down. But yeah, I would say top three for sure.
I know you don't love Suspiria.
I don't, or Bones and all.
I didn't love Bones and all. But again,
Yeah.
it's sensual, right? You feel all the textures and the steaminess of it.
To an extent, to be honest, I was really pre-frightened about Suspiria because I thought if he can make me feel like what flowers smell like or a peach tastes like, what can he do in a horror context? What kind of sensations am I going to have that are going to be like terrifying? And I never got that from either of those movies.
Yes, Teddy asks, speaking of Furiosa, did you see Chris Hemsworth apologize for Thor 4 in an interview?
No.
I did not. That's pretty funny though. Yikes. Oh yeah, Leo points out the "I told you" shirt is a nice touch. That's another thing that comes around because various people wear that shirt at various times. Whose shirt is that?
I think the first time we see it, she's wearing it, and then he steals it from her dorm room.
She's wearing it at Stanford, and then he puts it on when he leaves her dorm room, and then he's wearing it later on.
Yeah.
In New Rochelle when they hook up that night, when he walks by the hotel bar window.
Yeah, he's hung onto it as a trophy, clearly.
Yes. Oh yeah, Mike Webb says Luf is a nice piano track too. Yeah, the do 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 do. That's
I just downloaded it, so I will be listening to this later.
Ah, good. Erica says it's her shirt. Matt says I bought an "I told you" shirt. if they're selling them, that's really smart. They should, because people are going to want to wear them just to.
And you know the costumes are by the Loewe guy, by the dude who is the designer for that Spanish fashion house. So her later like grown business lady ensembles are all like,
yeah. Well, stunning. you know, I love that sweater. The sweater she's wearing when Patrick tries to get her to coach him and he's having a cigarette in the alley, and she goes like stomping away from him in the alley. I'm like, I love that sweater. With dolman sleeves, like a camel colored sweater. I love that kind of thing. Oh, Patrick also steals one of Art's shirts at one point too, says Matt.
Oh, funny.
So again, is that like territoriality, or is that like wanting to be closer to somebody? I don't know.
Yes, all of the above.
Well, good. Well, I'm so glad that everyone was here to talk about this with us. I'm so glad that you all loved it. I know a lot of you guys have seen it more than once, so you're probably having fun catching all the little details. I'd love to see it again for sure. This will definitely be on my top 10 list. I'm assuming it will probably be on yours as well, Alonso.
For sure. Yeah, but I'm very pumped about the prospect of seeing it again. But I want to see it in IMAX, and I'm worried. I'm like, oh no, is Fall Guy going to get all the IMAX screens this weekend? Like, I got to run out and catch this thing while I can, because Ghostbusters 2016 got 1 week in IMAX. By the time I tried to get to it again, it was already gone. So like, unless it's something like Dune 2 or Fury Road or something where like it's going to live there for a while, you got to catch it while you can.
Yes, Brent says he's seeing The Fall Guy tomorrow night. Yeah, we just saw it last night. We did a quick little out of the theater reaction to it. When we're done chatting with you, lovely folks, we're going to have a review. We'll post that later on this afternoon. And then over at our Patreon, we are doing episodes 5 and 6 of Shogun. No, 7 and 8 of Shogun. We're almost done with Shogun. We are a little behind on it. We began it a little bit late. So we're doing 2 episodes at a time. So if you are a member of our Patreon, you get episodes 7 and 8 today. If you are not and like to join us, that is patreon.com/befastalday. I just did a little bit of planning for the rest of the month. So we know we've got The Sympathizer we're going to catch up with. If you guys have watched that Park Chan-wook show, we're going to catch up with that. See, HBO does it in a civilized manner. They do 1 episode a week. So we can get there. We can catch up in time. And then Bridgerton Part 1 of the new season of Bridgerton begins in a couple of weeks. So we will be recapping that as well. So busy time over there, but we're so thankful to have you here. Summer is officially beginning, and we'd love to have you the whole way through with us when all the good stuff comes out. So stick around. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your support. Thanks for your insights. Matt asks, any chances of recapping Hacks on Patreon? There's a new season of Hacks, right?
Yeah, I love Hacks. Comedies are hard because you sort of are left being Chris Farley, like, oh, that was funny. But never say never. Who knows? We've definitely got a lot of stuff coming up, and in May we'll have our monthly off the menu poll where I will be picking a variety of films out of my new book Hollywood Pride, which is out May 14th, and we'll talk about one of those.
Yes, for sure. And yeah, the book comes out May 14th. So you can pre-order. We've got a link to it in all the places where we do things. So go find Alonso's book. Thanks to you all. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Brent. Thanks, John. Thanks, Kay Walton. Synthesizer doing well. I haven't watched. I don't know. We're going to find out. We got some requests for it and we like Park Chan-wook. So we thought we would give it a shot. Thanks to all you guys. Have a great rest of the day. And we will see you again for more live streams as we go along all summer long. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.